Welcome back to Creative Questions. And this week, our guest is Kieron Lewis. Kieron's based out of the UK, so he's our first international guest, which is really cool because we got to have a lot of American versus Britain banter. It was really fun. He is a graphic designer, mainly editorial, focusing in hardback publications for clients such as Penguin Books, HarperCollins, and currently the Victoria and Albert Museum. Kieron also does a lot of hosting for Adobe Live. That's where I met him. In this episode, we talk about being dads, which was really fun. We talk about slang, American versus British slang, which was really fun. And then, of course, we had to talk about the legend, Gordon Ramsay. So this episode was a ton of fun. And without further ado, here is Kieron. All right, I think we're going. How's it going, Kieron?
I'm good, man. I'm excited to kick it with you, dude.
Yeah, man. It's I don't know. I always just have such a good time getting to like meet new people. We sat down already and kind of chatted, and like I don't know. I felt like it was just such an easy chat. So it's like
the
really
energy
cool
was there, no?
Yeah, it was dope. So I always like to start off with like, what's going on today? What you got going on this week?
What have I got on this week? I've had a few deadlines, but they've been knocked out the park, which is good. You know, when you do it and you feel good. I've had a few of those.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, the weather's nice in London. I'm not going to talk weather chat, but the weather's nice, and naturally everyone's on a good vibe, you know? When the sun is nice, everyone's happier. So yeah, I'm in a good place. I'm good.
Dope. Yeah, I'm in Arizona, which is normally, this summer has been so hot, but we're finally getting some breakage. Like this morning I went outside, it was like 70. I was like, oh, let's go. Okay. I rolled the windows
down. The Ducks hat is out. You're good for it.
Let's go for it. So it's been good. So that's always, I posted something yesterday where I'm like, now I feel like I don't have to be a jerk anymore. I can go back to being like a normal person. So,
I love that.
Yeah, man. I'm so happy to get a chance to chat with you. So I want to jump right into it. We'll start with the first question. So you do your main focus is mostly layout design. So I know that is something where most people are freaking terrified. They're like, in design, I don't want anything to do with that. First off, what is one thing that you wish people understood about layout design?
I think what comes to mind when people think of layout, they think of grids, and then they start to think of the restriction that comes with that. So the creative space is obviously massive. You've got branding, videography, photography, so forth. But with editorial, there is rules to it, and I don't know. It sounds a bit weird to say this, but I kind of like working sometimes in that space of rules. Obviously, there's still elements of experimentation and you can have fun with it and be creative, but there is elements which is kind of like the foundation, as it were, that you kind of work from, and that all comes down to things that are easy. For example, legibility. The idea of legibility and working with color and working with how eye line and how you view a spread from your eye direction is all these elements that people think of when they think of editorial and lines. And I think maybe it has a bit of a bad name just because of the grids that come along with it, but it is fun. I mean, I'm here to promote it. I love InDesign. It's fun, man. It's not as bad as people say it is. It's fun.
He's an InDesign advocate. He's here to,
of course.
Share it.
But you know what's funny about that? What's funny is hilarious, because I think when people get something in hand, like a tangible thing, like like a physicality of a book, that's when it's like, oh, this is cool. It's just more of a case of how do you think that was made? Like do you know what I mean? Like everyone likes to have something in hand, a book, print stock. But then when you think about the process, that's when it's just like, look into that as well, because that's also a cool element.
Yeah, and that's what, I don't know, and people are always like, well, print is dead, it's digital all the way. But there's nothing like having a physical copy of something.
Yeah, of course.
Nothing will ever beat that. People still buy table books because they're really cool to have. Like,
I'll be out of a job, man, if that was the case. Print is still around. I believe it will be. And obviously, there's a whole print digital debate, but there's something that you can't beat from a physicality of something in hand, right? And the print smell and all sorts.
For sure, yeah. I always like to ask, like, did you go to college for design? Did you figure it out on your own? Kind of what path did you take to kind of get there?
Yeah, it's funny because not many folks know this, but when I went to uni, I was studying video game design. I was doing, it wasn't even editorial, it wasn't even design, it was video game design. It took me a year to realize this is cool, but it's not really for me. I'm not gonna, I love gaming, I'm into that space, but, editorial, making books is what I love to do. So I shifted and I got a degree in graphic design, marketing and branding. So yeah, I did a lot of editorial projects in my uni career. I did a lot of side hustles as well, parallel to my uni career with some friends, like self-directed projects, and they were all to do with print. So that's kind of where my love of print kind of went and grew.
Yeah, you really got to like dive in and sink your teeth into it. So that's really dope.
It was fun. It was fun.
What's your favorite video game then? Like all time?
Ooh, dude, I want to get judged massively because there's okay. I've got to do it. I've got to do it in stages, right? Because my brain straight away went into N64, GoldenEye.
Me too.
That realm. And then you got like the Rayman PS1, and then you've got but like now I'm probably in that stage of FIFA, soccer, if you want to call it like that. I like a bit of FIFA and Call of Duty, those kind of games. I know the lingo, I know the US lingo. And yeah, so those kind of games. But I mean, I love, for me, video game design is still, even though editorial is what I do for a living, I'm always quite interested in how games are made, the kind of, the anatomy that comes from like the body creation, animation as well, that comes from it. It's quite cool.
For sure, yeah. It's something that I don't understand. Like, I'll look at a game and I'm like, I do the same thing with movies, like animated movies. I'm like, I don't know how you get from like on paper to this. So I'm always curious about it. It's wild. Like, it's a whole, and everyone it's wild. This is the thing that's always wild to me is like people consume these things, but again, have no understanding or concept of how they're made. Like, that always blows my mind. So that's one thing, like, in my creative or design career that I've kind of sought out. When it's like I bump up against something that I want to know, I go out and figure it out. Like, I feel like that's the only way you can be in love with something is to kind of dive deeper into it.
You have an appreciation as well, right? Once you kind of know, the method behind how it was created as well, it's like a different type of love because you love it from the aesthetics, but you also love it from the way it was formed and created, and someone sat down and storyboarded out this design, and they got the animator, and there's all these different layers, and I think it's wicked when you see it all come together.
100%. Okay, we're gonna hop into dad talk.
Dad talk. It didn't take long, did it? I love that.
No, we're gonna hop into it. So the next question I want to ask is, what have you learned about your childhood from being a new father?
Wow. What have I learned from my childhood? I think for me, I mean, growing up, from school days to uni days, all of those elements, I enjoyed my childhood, right? I enjoyed being at school, it was fun. And I think there's elements of when you go into dad mode, everything gets a bit serious, things get more real. Okay. And I am trying very hard, and so my wife, and she's very good at this as well, to give my daughter that freedom as well to also, enjoy. A good example of what I mean by that is, for example, my daughter's just started to learn to walk, right? So she does this thing where she's walking but almost running and she stumbles. Now, the instinct in the dad was like, oh my God, I've got to be there in case she falls, so I catch her. But then there's also the minutes of, you know what, she's going to fall. She now knows how to put her hands out. She's okay. If she falls, obviously I'll be there to pick her up, but she also needs to feel that element of, I can be a bit more free at the moment. So I'm learning that as a dad now, to be a bit more flexible. And come back to me in a year's time and we'll see where we're at.
But she's wild. Good for it, yeah. It's so wild how fast they grow in those first couple years. It's just like you have like a new human being every year. You're like, what is this?
Yeah. It's wild.
It's wild.
Sims
like,
in real life.
Yeah. Yes, but they can talk, and you can understand what's going
it's like a
on.
Tamagotchis
Yeah.
that you used to feed it, and you don't want to overfeed it in
Yes.
case you. Yeah, it's getting dark now, but yeah.
That's hilarious. But yeah, that's something that I had to learn too. Like in the beginning, is just like we were like, well, if we kind of save them every time, then we might be overreacting and like causing more of a problem. Like if we're
Yeah.
freaking out when they fall and they hop up and they're not even crying, then what are we might be putting things on them that they aren't even
Exactly.
like seeing or feeling. So
That's
in that beginning point, those beginning moments. That's something that like I was a stickler on. I was like, we can't. If they fall, we gotta keep it quiet, like straight faced, and let them kind of lead how they're feeling. But yeah, when I was like now having almost a 5-year-old, which is insane.
Okay.
In them, I see all of the things that like I was as a kid. I was like super hyper, like I was all over the place, and like it always felt like no one noticed it. You know what I'm saying? Like it was just like something that was like I talked a lot, I moved a lot, and it's kind of like almost ignored. And like I feel like in them now that I get a chance to like actually participate in that hyperness, I'm like, let's go do stuff. That. Like let's
you
go.
Be a kid
let's
again.
talk. Yeah, let's talk about like he'll hold whole conversations, and I'm like some things he doesn't get. Like he's just kind of like copying us, but. It's so great to get a chance to kind of like participate in those things that like maybe I wish my parents were there and noticed and participated in. It's just different. Times are different. I think we know a little bit more.
Exactly. And you know what I think when you were saying that, because I know we're both freelancers, right? And I think there's a beautiful thing about being a freelancer, being a dad, because you have flexibility to spend time with your children. Do you know what I mean? Because like growing up with my parents, they had the 9-to-5 job, right? So obviously, depending on the situation, you got to be in school, you could be in childcare. But I'm able to spend a lot of time with my daughter and my wife also as well doing a PhD. So there's that element that you feel like you're not missing out too much, because obviously we're going to feel like you always miss out, right? But we're actually a bit more involved in it. It's nice because every day is like a new day, right? So it's cool.
Yeah. It's I don't know how, and that's what I look back and I'm like, I don't know how my dad like did that, because my dad was in the military, so he was in the army.
Oh wow!
And
okay.
So he would go to work at like 5 a.m. and then we wouldn't see him till like 5:36 p.m. So it's like you were gone most of the day, like so it was a lot. So I always wish that it was different, and that's why I'm kind of going about it a different way, like kind of forcing freelance to be the only option. If that's the only way I kind of get to spend more time, then let's like make that actually happen. But you're right, those moments matters, especially young, getting a chance to spend those hours and that time, like giving to your kid what you have and like the values you have. No one else is gonna do it for you.
No, not at all. Not at all. And also, like the priorities of your life. I mean, it's funny because I was talking to an editor for a blog piece about the same exact topic, and the elements of where you obviously we all have different types of careers and we want to achieve certain goals and whatnot, which is fine, and I have my own as well. But that's not the priority anymore. It's just it's there. But you understand the importance of what you really want to be the center of your life. And for me, it's being a family, you know, being a dad, husband, and obviously everything that comes around the space of that. So that's also an important lesson, I think, being a dad and being a freelancer, that all the levels of priorities shifts massively. Yeah.
I feel like I've been like in waves lately a lot. I've been feeling that shift where it's like things that used to freak me out, like about the world or about like bills or like just those things that kind of stack on you as an adult. I'm just it feels a little bit more lax, and I'm like, the people that matter are right here in front. Like I have my wife and my kid, like they're right here. Why am I so, I understand those things do matter. Let's not say I'm never paying a bill again. That doesn't make any sense. But it's like in those moments that you actually get to take pause and like enjoy yourself, actually do it. Like let go of some of that stuff. Pick up the bag tomorrow morning, but tonight we're gonna hang out and have a good time. So
yeah, it's good. It's good for the mental well-being as well. It's all those elements. Yeah, for sure.
But for sure. I have another question in there. Something that I always know. I feel it's almost like they always talk about mom guilt, but I don't know if this is like just a dad thing, but it feels like a business owner thing. I never feel like like sometimes this is the thing where I'll like compare myself to other people who have no kids, and it's like, dang, they're just doing everything.
They're living the dream.
Yeah, like they get to do you ever feel like you wish there was more hours in the day, like being a dad? Like,
do you know what's mad? I used to think that, and then I'm like, no, because actually, if there was more, I'd still find ways of thinking there's not enough. It sounds crazy. Like 24 is 24, right? And it's I don't know. Like it's funny because even when I think back to my junior days or even my university days, I used to think I need more hours. I've missed out. Sure. I need more time. And now I'm like, actually, you've got this time. You make the most of that period. But one thing that has changed, maybe because obviously I've got a child, is like the days of waking up at 6 a.m. maybe even is nothing anymore. Do you know what I mean? 6 a.m. was wild back in the day, and now it's like if it's 6:30, that's a lay-in. It's just like 6:30, and then by default you get into a routine of you can get so much done by 11 o'clock. Like you realise by 11 a.m. you have already done the family stuff, you've done your emails, you've done your, do you know what I mean? You've done everything you need to do, and it's just, again, the levels of priority shifts. So
for sure.
I for me, more hours in the day would just, I'm happy with this. I'm content. I'm content with, I mean, I have no choice. I'm not going to get any more.
Yeah, sometimes I'm just like, and this is probably just a me thing, I need to... The ADHD is probably, I'm still trying to get that under control. There's still things I'm trying to understand about myself. But it really comes down to, like, you're right, it's the priority. Like, prioritizing the things that do matter. And I think prioritizing creativity. The thing, like, because working for clients and client projects are one thing, but you also got to prioritize the passion and the things that, like, you're curious about. And sometimes I have a hard time with that. Like, that's just a hard thing to... like get in there. So it's just, it feels like as you grow as a person and you take on all these things, you're a dad, you're creative, you're a freelancer, you're a business owner. It's just more things you kind of have to juggle. And it seems like that's just life. Like some people will eventually have to take in their parents and have to be a caregiver. And like, there's just more stuff as we get older that like, I don't think I even realize, like people are always like, oh, in my 20s, I'm going to figure it all out. And I'm like, I'm about to turn 34, and I'm like, I think there's more coming.
Snap, yeah. Like, yeah, there is, for real. It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. And I think as well, like, I don't know, like, there's certain things in this world that you cannot prepare for it. You can get as close as you can, and there's elements of just, it's the unknown. And actually, if you knew what these things were, maybe you wouldn't do the best you could, because actually you've in your mind you've already shifted of, I'm going to do this. So it's funny because like being a father, or even when my wife and I are wedding planning, or even going freelance is a good example. Going freelance, in my mind I knew I wanted to do, but it's almost like I had no idea if it's going to work, right? You go out there thinking I'm going to make the first 3 months and make it last and sustain myself financially, and if I can't, then you find a plan B. But a lot of it is the leap of faith, and you just go into it unknown, and it's how you are flexible in that period. That's what kind of determines how you kind of come out at the other end.
For sure. And it's and a lot of it is, there's some bravery and there's some fortitude, and you're like, I don't know if this is gonna work, but I'm gonna learn a lot from the process.
Sure.
And I feel like that's every day. Like that's the mindset you have to step in. I don't know, it gets scary out here.
Laugh at that. Of course, I've got you, bro. Don't worry, we're in the same. And for any dads listening out, it's like, we're all together in this one.
Bro, it'd be scary. You're like,
it's real.
Hey, I might have, because sometimes I'll like send a proposal, and I'm like, if this doesn't work, we're going to have to scramble. That's just going to be what it is.
We're going to make it work. We'll have to go do busking, family busking, you know what I mean? We'll do we'll set up our own band, and then we'll just have to just find a way, make it work,
But I did have a question about how going freelance worked for you. Like, how did you end up with your first client when you went freelance?
So this is an interesting story because there was a lot of organic things that happened that led up to the first client. So for example, my first client, which can sound wild to say, but was HarperCollins. Obviously, they're quite an established big publisher. Now, The reason how I got that, so prior to going freelance, I obviously worked in full time, but alongside my full time, I did a lot of self-directed work and voluntary work. And in one of the voluntary jobs I did, it was a platform called TEDx Houston, which is part of TEDx. But a lot of the work that we would do is that we would fly speakers out from the African continent and talk about things they're doing in that space of the world. Now, in this team, one of the members was worked at HarperCollins as an editor. So when I went free, like you can see I'm going this now, when I went freelance, obviously I reached out to my network and said, folks, I'm going into editorial, freelance, anyone knows any, gigs coming up, hit me up. Nancy Adamora, big shout out to Nancy because she's my sis. She put me forward as someone who could help with a publication project for HarperCollins. I had a call with the team. This was during pandemic, by the way. This is all during COVID. So we had lockdown, which is wild to even think this. So we couldn't grab a coffee or or whatever. We had to do it all via Zoom. Obviously, I had a portfolio. I had stuff, but I never made a book yet. I did a lot of stuff that was side hustles. I did stuff that was voluntary, but I never actually made my own book. So it was one thing for Nancy, the team member, to put my name forward, but it's another thing for me then to kind of prove my worth and say, yeah, I'm a mate, but actually I think I can do this. Do you know what I mean? I'm not going to let you down kind of thing. And they took a chance on me, and we produced a 300-page hardback book, which I'm super, super proud of even to this day. And that was kind of the turning point in terms of my career, freelance and working with other publishers and working on other hardback books.
Nice. That's insane. That being your first at bat, you're just like, I'm here. I've been preparing for this my whole life.
I was ready for like Eminem, like we're about to go on stage, the Mom Spaghetti on the, that kind of. I had a bit of a moment like, this is intense. This is hard work. It's a 300-page book, but you know what? If we do this and do it right and enjoy the process and and everything that comes afterwards, it could really open opportunities to do work in this space, and even more importantly, have a bit of ownership with when I start, taking control of the clients I want to work with. So that was kind of my vision. By doing this project, it could potentially lead to opportunities as well. And fortunately for me, it did.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. And that really speaks towards the and this is, I guess with that question, what I try to get at is the fact that we prepare for, because a lot of people are like, well, I want to be freelance. But there's a lot of steps that you kind of have to go through before you can make that jump. You're basically having to prepare your life or prepare your situation before you get there. You were doing volunteer work and all this creative stuff that you're showed that you were prepared to do it, but also you went out and did those things to make yourself prepared to do it. So I want to kind of when I talk to other freelancers, let them know no, it's not a fluke that you're a freelancer and you're successful. No. You did that thing. You went either networking or getting to know people. You went out and did those things. So I always I've been trying to reframe it for myself, and I'm I just want to also pass it to other freelancers. You're doing, you were doing the thing before you ever did the thing, which is also always really cool. Really cool to see.
You made a good point about the whole, if it's a fluke, because the idea of luck as well. I've always said, you put yourself in the right place, right time. I kind of believe in, good energy, good karma, and all those kind of things. And I do believe, you work hard on something generally, and things will happen, as a result of it. And sometimes it could be a bit of luck as well, or the way the planets align, depending on it. But yeah, it does have to come down to making, putting yourself available and making that hard work from early on. And I think one thing that's always a key thing, and I've always said this even to my wife today as a freelancer, the idea of becoming complacent can be something so easy and can creep into a lot of folks. I think when you've got, steady flow and you've got good clients, whatnot, it's so easy to just take your foot off the pedal a little bit and the gas, and to kind of sit in the bask of the ambience of the sunlight of the glow, basically, and then you kind of lose focus as to why you're doing what you're doing. So for me, it's always important to kind of remember why I set out to do freelance and the type of clients I wanted to work with, in terms of the core values that I stand by as well. So that's always been the forefront of when clients approach me or when I approach clients. Yeah,
makes perfect sense. I do the same thing. Without that why, you can't step into who you are and what you want to do for people. every day. So I think like you said, you have to know that why, and then you have to show up and be authentic. That's
Yeah.
because
Gotta
a lot
keep
of
it
people are
real,
like, well,
always.
yeah, a lot of people are like, well, how do I get that first opportunity, or how do I um, like go and be freelance? And I'm like, well, you got to go and do the things you want to do for other people, and do it
Mm,
in an authentic voice. Like be your weird self. Everybody has a weird
yeah,
self, but a lot of people
for
are
real.
turning down their weird to
Yeah.
fit in with everybody else. Turn your
Boost your
weird
weird up. Just
up.
turn your weird
Yeah,
right up and then see,
turn that up
crank it
and
up. I
see
love
how it
that.
goes. You might hit an angle that no one else has ever thought about before
So true.
because of your
So true.
perspective. Um,
Mm,
so I don't
I
know,
love
and
that.
that's my other thing about like I just love getting to meet other freelancers because it is a group of people who is like I'm just going to kind of do my thing. Like
Yeah,
I'm
that's it.
going to find my voice and I'm going to show my voice, and people are going to come after me because of my voice.
For real.
So that's always really
Totally.
cool. It's people who stand on
Totally.
that who they are, and I'm like,
Do you know
you
what
got to.
sorry, go ahead. No,
No,
but do you
you're
know what's
good.
interesting? I like, for me, the ones, the freelancers or the ones that I see out there doing their thing that really stands out for me. It's like you said, it's the ones that come at an angle that you can tell that they're comfortable in their own skin. They're comfortable in their body. And this is not a level of
Yes.
being, what's the word now? I can't think of the word now. Where you love it. Ego. It's not like an ego thing, not at all.
Yeah.
It's more, they're comfortable with what they produce. They're comfortable with sharing the work. They're comfortable in their own skin. That actually what they produce, that vibe is like an essence that comes through in their work. So you have a respect for it naturally. So for me, that's always been an important thing. And actually, when I give talks at unis or schools, I touch on, you got the skill set as a designer, you got the skills of being a creative, all the Adobe stuff and everything we do, but you got the people skills, which is so important. And people forget how the people skills feed in to the type of work that you do, and especially freelance. You know what I mean? I'm sure we'll touch on it, but there's a whole. It needs to work together. No one wants a burger without the bun, right? It's just yeah. That's the only way I can describe it. I don't even know where that came from. I just that's the only way I just came. Maybe I had a burger for last night.
I love
dinner,
that.
yeah.
I just because of your accent, I immediately thought of Gordon Ramsay when you said that.
Oh, you funny guy. He meant it Gordon Ramsay. He dropped those lines on me. Gordon Ramsay. That's jokes.
That's just yeah.
He did say Harry Potter, so that's good. That's good.
But that's a very good point, and it's you got if that's what you want to do, you got to stand. Those are the things you got to stand for, and be yourself. And those people skills. That's the one because my former career was like I was a mechanical engineer, but because it's such a you go to school for it, so everyone thinks like these skills that you're learning in school are everything you're gonna need for this career. But one thing that I found out is like communication is the difference maker. Like
100%.
being able to use those soft skills, and maybe I would have to because I worked in a lot of factories, so I'd have to talk to like union workers or like operators, and it's like being able to kick it and chat with them always led to them wanting to do the things that I needed them to do. But the people who couldn't do that always struggled to get their ideas out there. And it's like, wait, what's more important? Is it the skill or is it actually like those soft skills? And it's like, I mean, it's probably both, but people really do not pay attention to how important it is to like hone those soft skills. So it's a total package. I think being a freelancer is being a total package, and you gotta where you're weak, you gotta figure out how to make yourself better or tag someone else in to kind of teammate with you. That's just how it goes.
100%. I just quickly. I remember my wife was always touched on because we're quite different in terms of characteristic personality, and she's always kind of told me that, and I generally believe this. If I'm in a room, whether it's a pitch or a networking event, for example, the idea of you haven't got to be the loudest person in the room to be heard, and that's something that I've as I've gotten older, I've discovered that, because I used to think to myself at uni, you kind of got to be, especially if you want to stand out, it's how you stand out and what, and is it for the wrong reasons? And I think, I've learned that if I've it's better for me sometimes to digest information rather than just to speak without even really knowing what I'm kind of saying. It's just digesting it is totally fine, and that's okay. If you've got nothing to say, then just digest it, in opposed to just saying what comes. And I guess it's just a human instinct, right? You just sometimes you just pop out, but yeah.
You just want to fill the space.
Exactly.
It's tough, but you do eventually learn. If I don't have anything of value, why am I doing this?
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think that's in everything.
Yeah.
So my next question for you is, what has your experience been being a person of color in the book world? That's something that I'm like, I know it's probably tough to, like, there's probably not a lot of people who look like us in that world. So it's interesting because, funny enough, I gave a talk last week at an event about the importance of inclusivity and diversity within the creative space, right? For sure.
And I was obviously everyone on the panel was from different creative sectors, but I predominantly was editorial and print, right? And something that I realized, obviously you've got, I don't know how many creative spaces there are in the world, so there's obviously a lot, right? But with editorial and print, it's quite niche in a sense where obviously you've got publishers who work with freelance, that's fine, but they tend to kind of stay in the circles that there's already been for many, many years. It's difficult to break in. And for me, the thing that I did from when I first started out in freelance was kind of carve a space out. And what I mean by that is the HarperCollins book, for example, the book that we did was about race and community. And I realized that when you've got publishers that want to work on publications that are basically, revolving around race and communities and design and whatnot, especially Black community, it would be weird to work on a publication about the Black community and then hire a designer who's not of color. Do you know what I mean? So I did find that was where, for example, Penguin, I did stuff for Penguin or Chronicles books, where that's the kind of work I was doing in that space, because that was the work that resonated with what they need, and more importantly, work that I wanted to create as well, being a Black creative. But one thing I do quite regularly, which is I think quite important, is that with HarperCollins, they have now a Harper Design Academy, which I think a lot of publishers need to do, and that's basically where, if you're not from a traditional publishing background or print background, and you're of color and you want to get into a space, how do you kind of do it? And they put on events where they have creatives who work in the space, such as myself, that will come and give talks, share experiences, share how they started out. And I think that's beautiful, because that's how, when you've got people who look like you discussing how they got into it, then it feels more relatable for those who are listening. Because it can be it is niche, it's incredibly niche. I think, it can only benefit to have, diverse people in your team, or diverse people who are working on publications, because the outlook on how they, visualize graphics or visualize what they, the end deliverable will be completely not what they thought it would be, which is great.
It comes from the different perspectives. That's one goal of mine, is kind of like in the work that I do. I do a lot of branding work, is mostly what I do, and I feel like branding work is people work. So you kind of have to come from it in an angle of bringing different perspectives. My one perspective is not going to be the answer to every problem. So how can I build teams that have those different perspectives in mind? Which I think is a thought that needs to be explored more in just the world in general. It feels like we're very hey, that's my boy, so I'm just gonna bring my boy on. How about me and my boy just do it? And it's that's so great, but is that the answer to what we're is that gonna get us the best solution? So and it's tough, because it's being a person of color, it puts it puts us on the outside. So I don't know why, but it's just kind of what it has been. So being put on the outside, we understand how important perspective is, and diversity of thought, and inclusion of different types of people. And it's sad that it's we have to shoulder a mission that is not our fault.
It wasn't meant to. Do you know what? I'm so happy you mentioned it, because actually there is a lot of that sometimes, where it's never in a million years, but I didn't generally believe that when I left uni, you know, I know I love doing work about the community and that space because voluntary work was touching on that, but I never thought I'd be, I wouldn't say an activist, but heavily working on publications just about the black community. I do obviously other stuff, but I never thought that would be the case. And you find yourself already being a bit of an activist or a champion, which I started to think, well, actually, I don't even use the label an activist, but actually I don't think that's a bad thing, because when I do give talks at unis, and I think to myself, when you've got, regardless of, you know, background, but in particular with the black community, when you've got young black creatives at university or college level or whatever, and they see someone who's in the industry actively working with brands who look like them, that's powerful. And I never, even when I went back to when I was in uni days, I never had, you know, a lot of black creatives that came to give talks. So, you know, I don't want to use the title of activist, but actually if I can do projects I'm doing now and then go back to unis and talk about that, you have no idea what seed that will plant into the person who's viewing, or, you know, in the audience of how they can see and how they can navigate the industry themselves. So that has to be the key, right, of how you then think about the next generation kind of coming up and what they can bring.
For sure. Yeah. And I always like to say, like, even without doing anything, being a part of things and just being is enough to, like, that's an activist movement. You know what I'm saying? Like, just to, I'm a designer, and like just to exist in that world is enough. And that's really cool to kind of go against what is the norm. I think about, like, the first thing that comes to mind is I think about tennis and Serena and Venus Williams. And it's like, they were like, to look at where we are now in tennis, and like, we have multiple people of color in tennis now. And it's like, you're right. Those just showing up is enough to like spark that, like, oh shoot, I can do that too. Like, I love that. And I have the same mission as you. I just want other people to know that, like, people that look like us can do this.
100%.
It's you don't have to be in the NBA. You don't have to be a doctor. You don't have to be an engineer. You don't have to go all these routes that, like, you feel like it's going to make you a bunch of money. You can make a living off of being a designer, and a freelance one at that. So I think that's off a laptop. Like,
for sure. But it's funny, like, do you ever think, I think as well, a lot of it can come down to, like, family culture as well. Yeah, without getting too deep into it. So my background is Jamaican, and it's funny because sometimes there is elements of within our own culture, like when you, like, for example, my grandma is a perfect example. I love my grandma, like, cook food like anything, but I remember telling her I'm going freelance, and she didn't really get what that really meant. And I understand, because freelance for her wouldn't have been a thing really back, you know, when they were kind of growing up, Windrush era. So even today, when I'm saying grandma, the clients I'm working with, and she's like, are you sure you're still okay though with freelance? Like, are you sure? I'm like, grandma, I've been doing it for 3 years. I can sustain. It's okay. But I think as well, there's a lot of cultural values that's bestowed on us within the black community from growing up as family, because sometimes it's the kind of jobs that you would be considered to be, you know, that is the only career we really should be looking at, because everything else doesn't seem realistic. So like that mindset has completely shifted generation. And even as fathers and what we teach our kids, can you imagine what our kids' careers will be moving forward? It's insane.
Bro,
so that's the beautiful thing about it all. It's
no,
mad. Can you imagine like Jetsons like flying around like I don't know.
I had no. It's funny that you use the Jetsons.
Tesla's everywhere. I don't know. Like,
I have no idea.
Yeah, it's wild.
But it is fascinating. I remember telling my mom, she was here on vacation in Phoenix, and we were like in a pool together, and I was like, I was still doing my engineering job, and I was like, Mom, I think I got like 5 years. I don't think I could do this. And she was like, no, you're gonna do it. Like, this, you're not gonna do anything else. And I was like, that's weird for you to be that, like, harsh, or like that, kind of have that tone with it where it's like, we're not gonna rock the boat kind of thing. But sure. I always think back to like what she had to probably go through. Like, they're not that far removed from like the civil rights time, and then kind of the backlash of the civil rights era. Like, there's a lot of stuff that probably happened where it's like, well, we're thankful and grateful for anything we have, because we could have nothing. So
of course,
it's just wild to be a part of basically the rebellion. I feel like this is our rebellion against that complacency type of mindset into things that are a little bit more risky. But again, with risk, that's the only way we can kind of grow and like shed and like make for the next generations. So it's
100%.
I'm excited to be a part of that. I know a lot of people are
course.
like again, that mindset still lives on, but I'm gonna be part of the rebellion. And you were talking about activism. It's an activist act to go against those types of mindsets where it's like we
100%.
can't do something, and it's like
100%.
we can. We I,
100%.
we are both examples of this is something
100%.
that we can do. So
yeah,
it's really cool.
I totally agree, man. Totally agree.
All right, I got one more question before we get into our final question. This is a little bit more goofy.
Hit me with the goose stuff. I like that, man.
So, what is your favorite American slang?
You already mentioned the Gordon Ramsay flex. I love that. I was just like, this guy knows about. Do you know what's funny? Because just obviously we've met through like online and obviously doing Adobe stuff as well. Connected. That's how we connected. So when a lot of the people I host tend to be Americans. So I've actually schooled up my own American twang as a result of, and I love it. It's hilarious because sometimes I don't even. I feel like the things I say is quite American. I don't even realize it. I'm not even American. I'm English as it comes.
You like flipped into Jamaican. Soccer earlier? I was like,
yeah, because I knew who I was talking to. I had to just sprinkle that element of, this guy's across the ocean. I can dabble in that. Do you know what my favorite word is? My favorite. Do you know what's hilarious? Came to mind like the word bougie.
Bougie.
It's funny. Can that count? Can that count as like?
Yes. Does that not exist over there?
No, it exists. Yeah, we don't get Migos over here. No, I love this. It exists. No, I love that. Yeah. We only get Hugh Grant. No, we do. It's funny because like my sister, for example, she's much younger and like I we both listen to type of music as well, to be fair. But I think she's in the TikTok era, right? And I'm not into. Man. I haven't even explored into TikTok realms yet. I'm a LinkedIn kind of guy, Instagram kind of guy. But it's funny when I hear. Or when she learns these new dance moves or whatever through TikTok, and then I see it on my stories pop up through my Insta stories and stuff from her. I feel like I'm educating myself on what is going on in terms of current. So yeah, the word bougie, I mean, it pops up occasionally in the house, whether it's me or my wife, I don't know. And I don't know, it's a word I think is hilarious. And I had to Google it before coming, because I had to Google what that, in my mind knew what it meant, but I had to kind of Google. And I think let me see if I've got the wording up here. It was like, luxurious in lifestyle, yet humble in character. Yeah. When you break it down, it sounds so beautiful, like, do you know what I mean? But then the word bougie, I didn't even think it had that kind of beautiful connotation behind it. So yeah,
it's actually like when you talk about it this way, it's actually a beautiful word. Like
it's nice. Like... it's just the way you see it. Do you know what I mean? Like when you hear Lil Uzi singing it, that's when it's a little bit like okay,
100%.
That's funny. What's your British slang? I've got to ask. What's your British slang? Have you got a British slang?
So I will tell you, a lot of this is predicated off of Love Island UK.
Love Island, you dropped them bombshells on me. Wow. Not even I watched that. Okay, cool.
Bro, me and my wife will watch pretty much anything when it comes to like trashy TV. So some of my favorites are Mugged Off. Mugged Off is fire.
It's so East London, I love that.
And then sometimes they'll say like Pied Me Off. That one's fire too.
What's that? I haven't even heard that.
That's when you like Pied Me Off is like when you are like talking to someone in like a dating context, and then you basically just shrug them off for somebody else.
Pied me off. See, I'm not even schooled up in that spirit. I'm surrounded by it. I didn't even hear that. Okay.
It's fire. They use that one all the time.
I'm hanging out with too many Americans. I'm not persuaded. I don't know what's going on.
One that my wife loves is Geezer, because they're like that's bro, I got a whole list. That show, the first time I watched season 1 of that show, me and my wife were like, we don't understand what they're saying. Like,
that's so funny.
Because they're using so many of these slang words that it's like kind of impossible to understand. It's not even the accent, because like I've watched British stuff before, but it's just like, what are they? What is this?
Do you know what's on that? It's hilarious that you mentioned it, because I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and I remember thinking to myself, this is just my opinion, doesn't mean it's right, and I don't want to be controversial by saying this, but I think with the Brits were so exposed from super young and early to listening and hearing American stuff, whether it's cartoons, music, that it's like the norm. It's so the norm to hear it over here. But for the US, because obviously it's like its own I don't want to say island, but I don't want to get too political, but you can take influence from within in a bit. So you don't really need to hear from the outside because it's the US, right? So that's why you're probably used to your own space in that realm. So when you hear it, like, it's like, oh, that sounds quite... And to be fair, I noticed it when I went to Washington. I gave a talk in DC a few years back, an event, and dude, I got so many free coffees, man. Like, I'm not even joking. Like, and I think the accent, it helped a bit. I'm not gonna lie, it was nice.
100%.
Yeah,
people love. Cool. People here love an accent. Like,
we need to live out there, man. I need to move to. need to get some free coffees on a daily basis.
People will just show up to listen to you talk. They'll just be like,
jokes.
I don't even know what he's talking about, I love the accent.
He's not even good at his work, but actually his accent sounds decent. Like, cheers, man. That's hilarious.
But you're right. America, our currency is culture. So, and entertainment. So a lot of the things we do are to be sold to the rest of the world when it comes to those things. And I think it's a little bit of like, they also cut off the rest of the world from us for like a propaganda reasons. But that's a whole nother conversation.
That's a whole political podcast part 2, isn't it? Like,
yeah, that's a whole nother conversation.
Let's keep it PG,
I just find it fascinating to just talk to you about like the way you speak about where you're from and it being different than the Black experience. Because like you said, your family's from Jamaica. There's people in America who have that same road from Jamaica to America, but yours is just Jamaica to London. Yeah, and London, yeah. Again, we're all cut from the same cloth, but it's like our experiences are going to be different. And again, those are those perspective things. But I just love like talking how you experience the world compared to kind of how we experience it over here. That's
and to be fair, I mean, the beautiful thing that connects as well is, without being cheesy, is creativity, right? Because I do a very different, type of work that you do, but obviously we all have that overarching umbrella of creating work, creating impactful work, right? That can help and inspire. So I mean, that's why I even love doing the hosting Adobe stuff or even other clients in the US, because regardless of my background and your background, we come for a common cause, right? And I think that's beautiful as well. And even kicking it now on a podcast with you and hearing your experiences and sharing, there's much more similarities than there is differences, always. So yeah, that's a good thing, man. Besides the whole soccer football thing, but let's not get into that one.
It's not, and it's not just like it's mostly just the accent. I'm sure the experiences are similar.
For sure, for sure.
But you had such a big reaction from Gordon Ramsay. What is your thoughts on the Ramsay empire? I am part of the Ramsay empire.
That's hilarious. It's hilarious, like that things that it's like, how can I describe it? I guess it's like things that are really cemented in, like, from the US, when people think of the word, if they even think of the word London, what comes to mind straight away? And like things like Gordon Ramsay, or even if we're looking into the rap culture, for example. So rap culture is an interesting one, because there's a lot of, I don't know if you listen to like UK rap and things like that as well.
Sometimes so sometimes you have a lot of rappers out there doing their thing, and I'm always quite interested by like the Gordon Ramsay thing. I mean, I know of him, of course. I mean, we're not besties. We don't go to the pub. We don't go to the pub for a pint or anything like that. We're not on that kind of level. I'm not going to pretend like we are. But yeah, it's interesting because also as well, I think there's a bit of a stereotype, which is like the whole, we can be, this is my opinion, again, doesn't mean it's right, but for sure,
as Brits, we can be rude, but it doesn't come across rude because it sounds like we're being polite, maybe because of the accent. So we get away, and I've heard that as well from people from the US saying, you can insult me, but it still sounds nice. And I'm like, you know what I mean? It's weird to think that, because I know if you tell one Londoner to another Londoner that, they're like, no, it's not. It's definitely, you're being rude. But I think there's elements of how we just go about, cultural differences and what you're surrounded by and elements. And I mean, I find myself schooling myself up every time I do an Adobe Live host and I'm meeting a US person, because again, we have different backgrounds and all these elements. And for me, it's hilarious. Like, I think of US, I think of, I'm going to be political. I'm not going to get into that space, but like, there's a lot of like in the creative space, especially with like the US, and like even graffiti as well. When I went to Brooklyn, for example, that was something which hit me hard. Do you know what I mean? Like Brooklyn, that I haven't been to many parts of the US yet, and I would love to explore more. But when I went to Brooklyn, I got elements of where I grew up in South London, Brixton. That's a very small, Brixton's, if you don't know, it's, South London, and it's full of cultures. A lot happening. It's heavily black community, but the creative space in Brixton is massive, right? And the graffiti on the wall and so forth. And I got that vibe when I went to Brooklyn. So like, it was nice to go to another part of the world, but then still feel like there's essence of home. So yeah, I'm still learning this whole cross-Atlantic vibe. Yeah. I have no idea. Yeah. But the accent helps, so maybe it's just like,
It does. Because I feel like that's what part of people's fascination with Gordon Ramsay is that he's an attractive guy. That's gotta be.
You see, that's hilarious.
I think people in the US feel like
you dropped that. That's like, drop that little bombshell and they ran away.
Bro,
like, what?
I think that's part of it. Is like people are like, this is and then the accent. I think it's mostly that's hilarious. And I think that's been like.
Okay.
And then people here love that. They
like it.
That's kind of what it is. And I think food culture has also blown up here recently. And I think that's like just how much we're being inundated with it on social media. That's TikTok and Instagram. That really if this is the time if you want to go and be a food like a cook and a chef to really put your stuff out there and show people how to make things and garner a following. This is not like it's now. I feel like that's most of what I see on social media now and what works.
For real.
So I think he just hit it at the right time. He just showed up
100%.
and he was like kind of hit it at the right time. But
so you just binge watching loads of Gordon Ramsay stuff.
Bro,
you and your wife just
anytime he has a new show, I'm there.
That's jokes. Maybe I need to school up myself and actually get involved and watch a few. Because I tell you what my guilty pleasure is, because I have got a guilty. Is like, and I know you have it in the US, The Apprentice. The Apprentice. Yeah. I'm ashamed of that, but that is my pleasure. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, it's trash TV at its finest though, but it's good.
Do you guys have a UK version of that, or are you watching the American?
I feel like it started off in the UK. No,
I
don't want to get controversial. Did
it? Did. I don't know.
Alan Sugar. Yeah. Possibly.
Okay, good.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe Soulja Boy did it first, but I don't know who it came out first. I don't know. I feel like it started off in.
It probably did.
Possibly. But I haven't watched the US. version of it. But
okay, dope.
Yeah, there's certain
we
things.
We don't support that guy.
Things that, but to be fair, there's certain things though. Like, I feel like, and this is my opinion again. Like, if a show is done in the UK, when I see it done by the US, or vice versa, if show's done in the US and the UK try to take it or adopt it, make it their own, it's difficult because there's jokes that just don't cross over. Do you know what I mean? It just doesn't. Like, for me, hilarious shows like Friends or like How I Met Your Mother, all those things is hilarious. But if they did a British version of it, it'd be cringe a bit. And there is amazing British humour, but the British humour over here, like, I don't know if you know Peep Show, for example, or like, is these kind of shows where it's awkward funny, but for us, that's hilarious. But I can understand, like, my wife is Spanish, so awkward funny isn't funny, maybe for her. So, like, it's a different type, Trying to fit a square peg in a circle hole,
The Office, because there is a UK version of The Office, but then...
That's an exception. That's funny in both sides.
But I feel like they had to change it because the tone wouldn't have fit.
It wouldn't have fit. Yeah, it wouldn't have fit.
So, yeah, you're absolutely right. Another one that I love is... you guys have the Den of Dragons, which is Shark Tank here.
Dragon's Den.
Yeah, that's the same. Idea. That's the same show, basically. Yeah,
it's savage, but I do like it. It's savage.
I'll be like, take.
Yeah.
Scaling your business.
Some serious guts to be able to go on. Yeah.
I was actually at a talk a couple weeks ago. And a lady who was on the show, like, spoke about her experience. Like, she was on Shark Tank. And she was like, I showed up. I didn't prepare. I just was like, I thought my idea was good enough. And I thought I could kind of, like, freestyle it. Sure. I didn't watch her episode, but she said she got ripped to shreds.
Yeah, those are kind of things you kind of need to.
She said she was crying, like, there on screen.
Just
to the point where, like, after she went to the hotel, they had to send, like, a psychologist to her room.
Wow,
to kind of, like, make sure she was okay.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you a little fun fact, and obviously I can't say the name just yet, but I went on a TV game show, which is coming out soon, and I can't even say too much. But I tell you one thing I noticed, the reason why I just dropped that line there is because how they edit things when you go on TV, and that's one thing I've discovered that, because I've seen previews already when it comes out, and again I can't say for whatever reason, but it's wild how in her mind maybe it came across not as bad, but the way they edit it and cut it up for entertainment values, it's wild. That's why just keep your hands by your sides and just occasionally laugh, and then maybe they can't do too much with that content. And yeah, if you give them something to work with, they will demolish you from a production perspective. So yeah, man. I worked on Shark Tank, by the way, just in case you were on Dragon's Den. But yeah,
bro, no, you're absolutely right. That's actually part of what I love about these types of shows. Is it's like, how did we get here? Like, I know I would just love to see the wall of footage that they have, and like them in a meeting, like, oh yeah, we can really work with that.
We can work with this. We can.
And like the narrative
bad,
casting,
yeah.
like they're like,
yeah,
we can make Joey look like he really hates Rachel over here.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's crazy. I'm sure it's just a whole thing where it takes
a different type of person to think that way, don't know. I feel like it's not very. I don't know. Is it very savage? But yeah, if it sells, it sells.
But this has been a great talk. I always end every episode with a question about creativity, because this show's called Creative Question. What does creativity mean to you? And you can answer this any way you want. It's just an open-ended question.
What does creativity mean to me? For me, it's got to be about working on projects that is bigger than yourself. It's bigger than yourself, right? So anything for me personally, when I create a piece of work, it's not, the final deliverable is obviously a beautiful thing because we spent time working on it, the process and whatnot, but it's what can happen as a result of that piece you've done, for example. So I'm only going to use the HarperCollins as an example because it aligns to what I'm going to say next. When we did this publication during pandemic, it was actually during the Black Lives Matter movement as well, and it was during the George Floyd killing. This book, the amount of conversations that people had as a result of it, or exhibitions that we put on as a result of it, that's something you can't, we had the idea it might do this, but we didn't think it would do it to that extent. And I think that's, for me, creativity is when it goes above and beyond, when it goes past that point of a deliverable, and it can really have some impactful change on communities. Like, that's, for me, that's the sweet spot. And that's kind of where, even moving forward with other clients I work with now, I work very hard to work on projects where it can really leave a lasting impact on whoever's going to be digesting this from whatever background or community.
Yeah, that's huge. Like, basically being able to affect, like, actually touch humans, like, actually touch other people and, like, make them feel something. That's what is, I always think that's what's so cool about the work that we do, is it's, a lot of people make stuff and do things, and it's like, but we do things with almost, depending on who you are, the sole purpose of getting other people to move or be moved by what we're making. And I'm like, 100%. That's so special. Like, to get that opportunity every day, I feel like is amazing. Like, that's, and it's not, and that's why sometimes I even have the hardest time, like, quoting projects, because I'm like, if this project is big enough in not like big enough in like deliverables or anything, but big enough in impact, I'm like,
I hear you.
I have a hard time like even wanting to charge you anything, because I'm like, this is a big deal for just human beings. But I do got to charge you something. Like, we gotta
live. But it's so true. You hit the nail on the head. And it's actually people who are not even just from the creative space. It's people like my grandma or like your parent or whoever are not from the creative space. I mean, that is the key, because we don't just design stuff for only the creative space, right? We design it, if anything, for people who are not even in the creative space sometimes, because they're the ones, who are not from that background. And you do find that when you approached by a client, or if it's depending on the background, they're not necessarily from a creative space themselves. Actually, they actually want creative work doing, which is why they've approached you. So that's also a beautiful thing, where you can have an impact on regardless of the discipline that you work within. But you hit the nail on the head. The idea of just feeling something, is anything, and that in itself is a conversation starter.
Yes, it's so awesome. So I want to give you space to share anything that you're working on, that you want the world to know.
What I want the world to know. What am I doing? So yeah, I'm working on a project at the moment with Victoria and Albert Museum in London, which is a big project. It's a project called The Music is Black, and it's 125 years of Black British music in the UK. So that's a big project landing. It should be spring next year, ideally in that space. So I'm the sole designer on it. So I'm working on cover, inside, full shebang, and obviously I'm working on a few other projects as well. But yeah, they tend to be, the work I do is publications. So that's, if you check my website at kieronlewis.com, it's always editorial is my space. And hopefully this podcast has like changed people's perspective on InDesign as well, and like thinking I want to get involved. I feel like I'm an advocate, but I have to come back to like a full circle moment.
You had to come back.
Beginning. I had to bring it back.
It's not that bad, guys. It's not that
deep.
bad.
It's not that deep. It's just grids and formats and layouts. Besides that, and typography. But no, on a serious note, like that's kind of the space I'm at now with work. And obviously I do hosting as well, like I said, with the Adobe stuff. So I do a lot of that, which is beautiful because that is separate to my design work. It's just speaking to people like yourself, knowing about the design methodology and their background. So obviously Max is coming up soon. So I will be going to Munich and doing some stuff in Munich next month with the Adobe team out there, which would be nice. And yeah, so you can catch me on KieronLewisWebsite.com and social medias. That be.
Nice. I usually ask that question, but you just went ahead and put it there.
Sorry, dude. That was my inner host. That was my.
You killed it. I appreciate it. Less lift.
This is your show, bro. I just came on and started talking.
No. Yeah, he came on my show. He just took over everything, like
with his Gordon Ramsay flex and Who's this guy?
This has been so great. Getting to
cool,
get to know more about you, hear about the things you're going through. I really appreciate you. I really appreciate the work that you're doing, and hope that you continue shining your light on the world because it's important. So, thank you for being here, and we'll definitely chat more.
Sounds like a plan, bro. Thank you.
Peace. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Creative Questions. Like, comment, or subscribe to allow us to keep making more episodes. I appreciate you for being here, and I'll see you on the next one.